Hi, everyone, and welcome to this very special event with Yuval Harari in conversation with Jeff Kinney. I'm Kim Havens, the event manager here at An Unlikely Story. Professor Noah Harari is a historian, philosopher, and the best-selling author of *Sapiens: A Brief History of Humankind*, *Homo Deus: A Brief History of Tomorrow*, 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, and *Sapiens: A Graphic History*. His books have sold more than 40 million copies in 65 languages, and he is considered one of the world's most influential public intellectuals today. In his new book, Unstoppable Us, Volume 1, his first children's book, Professor Harari takes a look at how humans, originally weak and slow, took over the world. We have a lot of power, so much so that the fate of all the other animals depend on us. To understand the power humans possess and to learn how to use it in good ways, we have to learn how we got that power in the first place. Professor Harari relates our history like a good detective story, with humor and an unbelievable ability to break complicated ideas down in a way kids and adults can understand. I found myself reading parts aloud to friends and family. They were just so brilliantly stated. Joining Professor Harari in conversation today is Jeff Kinney, the owner of An Unlikely Story and the best-selling author of the wildly successful Diary of a Wimpy Kid series. Since the first book debuted in 2007, Jeff has traveled the world, visiting 39 countries and speaking to hundreds of thousands of kids. So without further ado, it is my great honor to welcome Yuval Noah Harari and Jeff Kinney.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Kim. And Yuval, I am thrilled to see you on my screen. I wanted to start by saying thank you for taking the time to speak with us today, and to our unlikely audience. We're here in Plainville, Massachusetts. We have a great regional bookstore. I hope you'll visit one day. I've been a fan of yours since I read *Sapiens: A Brief History of Humankind*. You managed to make human anthropology feel vital and contemporary and cool. And I wanted to start by saying thank you very much for using your gifts to help people like me understand our world a little bit better.
Thank you, and it's good to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah. So we're here to talk about your new book, Unstoppable Us. And I have to say, when I read the title, I thought it was a motivational book. The title is very American, you know, Unstoppable Us. But when I started reading, I came to understand the title differently. Tell us what Unstoppable Us means.
Well, it means two things. On the one hand, it means that we are the most powerful animals on the planet. Nobody else out there can stop us. Not the lions, not the elephants, not the whales. If we set our minds on something and we work together, we are the most powerful thing on this planet. On the other hand, it also has a more kind of dark side, which is that if we set our minds on something bad, also, there is nobody out there that can stop us and save us from ourselves. You know, it's not like we are kids on this planet, and if we do something really outrageous, the adults will intervene to stop it. No, there are no adults out there. It's just us. And also that it's difficult for us to stop ourselves. That, you know, no matter what we achieve, we always want more. A lion that eats a giraffe, eats enough, goes down to sleep. It's satiated. But humans, when they gain something, it's never enough. We always want more. So if somebody has $1 million, they want $10 million. They have $10 million, they want $1 billion. And that makes us very dangerous. And also, you know, means that we are never satisfied. So part of our mission as humans is finding ways to stop ourselves, both in order to save the world from us, and also in order to gain some peace of mind, to be just able to, you know, stop for a while and enjoy what we have.
Yeah. So how did it come to be that human beings took over the earth? You say that human beings rule the earth. We're not the fastest. We're not the, you know, we don't have the sharpest teeth or the, you know, or anything like that. How did it come to be that we made this giant leap?
Yeah, it's a strange story. Because as you say, when you look at us individually, we don't look remarkable. I mean, compared to many other animals, we are much smaller than elephants. Like, we don't have big muscles like gorillas. We can't run like cheetahs. We don't have poison like snakes. And actually, for most of the time there were humans on Earth, we were like in the middle part of the food chain. There have been humans on this planet for more than 2 million years, and for most of this time, we were just another kind of animal. We hunt some of the smaller animals, the big animals hunt us. That's the way it is. And then in the last, say, 100,000 years, we suddenly took off and became the rulers of this planet. And this is because we learned something that no other animals knows how to do, which is to cooperate flexibly in very, very large numbers. Chimpanzees are stronger than us, but they can cooperate, say 50 chimpanzees can cooperate. Humans can cooperate in thousands, millions, billions. These clothes that I'm wearing, I didn't make these clothes. There are some people on the other side of the world who made these clothes that I'm wearing. And what I eat, similarly, it comes from other people who grew the food. And this ability to cooperate is what distinguishes us from all the other animals. And if we then ask, why can we cooperate in a way that chimpanzees or elephants can't? The answer, again, very, very strange. The answer is that we can invent and believe fictional stories, all kinds of fairy tales and whatever, which no other animal can do. And you can ask what's helpful about that. It doesn't sound like a very useful thing, but it is useful because this is the basis for cooperation. If everybody believed in the same story, you can't personally know all the other people in your country or whatever. But the way you cooperate, if everybody believes in the same story, then they all follow the same rules and can act together. Even if you think about sports, like a couple of kids who never met before, they meet on a soccer field, and within a few minutes, they can play soccer. And how can they do that? They can do that because they all agree, they all know the story of football, that you have to get the ball into the goal and whatever. And as long as everybody agree on the same story, you can play with complete strangers.
Yeah. And is there one story that unites all human beings? Is there anything that we all believe in that makes the world work?
Money. The only thing that I was just in a school in New York, and this question was raised. And not everybody believes in the same God or in any God. Not everybody believes in the same mythology or in the same nation, but everybody believes in money and in the same money, which is, again, quite remarkable. Because if you think, well, what is money? That people give it so much importance. Like you have the dollars, and it's just green pieces of paper, which are absolutely worthless. I mean, you can't eat them and you can't drink them. You can't do anything with them. And it doesn't really make sense. I mean, if you give to a chimpanzee the choice, here is a banana, and here in my other hand is a pile of $1 million. Every chimpanzee will choose the same thing, the banana. But humans, almost every human being on Earth will choose the green pieces of paper. Why? Because there is a story about these green pieces of paper. And as long as everybody believes the story, it works. Again, I can go to the supermarket and give these worthless pieces of paper to a stranger I never met before, and he or she will give me not just one banana. They will give me like a pile of bananas and bread and whatever. So this is why we rule the world and not the chimpanzees, because we can invent these kind of strange stories and they can't.
Yeah, and I sometimes think about that in a dystopian novel where society falls apart. I wonder if human beings would still believe in money. I wonder if that would be the thing that they would say, you know what, we have to still believe in this because we have to believe in something. I don't know the answer to that. So I read Bill Bryson's book, A Short History of Nearly Everything, and a quote that really stuck with me. It was towards the end of the book, and he says, when human beings arrive on the scene, it's bad news for everybody else. So tell me what happened when human beings started to enter into other lands that they'd never been to before?
So what happens is that very quickly, most of the other big animals disappear. For instance, if you look at America, so the continent of America was home to a very large variety of big animals like mammoth and mastodon and megatherium and all kinds of giants that are no longer there. And humans arrived in America about 15, 20,000 years ago, coming probably from Siberia through the Arctic. And within a couple of thousand years, most of the big animals of America disappear. And all the evidence points towards us, or towards our ancestors, that we drove them to extinction. And again, you can ask, how can we do that? I mean, we are not so strong. And this, it's thousands of years ago. We didn't have guns. We didn't have airplanes. People just had spears and stone knives. But people already were able to cooperate in large numbers. And the animals didn't understand really what was happening. I mean, they look at these new creatures that appear in America, these apes, and they don't look dangerous. So they don't protect themselves very well. But they don't understand this is the most dangerous thing on the planet. And we also have evidence that our ancestors destroyed or drove to extinction other kinds of humans that lived on Earth back then. I mean, now we are used to a situation when all the humans in the world are the same. Like you go to the US, you go to South Africa, you go to Australia, you go to Japan, it's the same humans. But 50,000 years ago, you have different humans living in really different kinds of humans. And our kind of humans, they just live in Africa. And they come out of Africa and they apparently cause all the other humans also to disappear, except here and there were some kind of mixed families. We have evidence today from our DNA that, for instance, another famous kind of human that lived back then, Neanderthals, there were some interbreeding between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. So sometimes, say 50,000 years ago, there was a kid whose mother was a sapiens and whose father was a Neanderthal. And we are all descendant from that kid. Because if we test our DNA today, between 1% and 3% of our DNA, of our genetic code, it actually comes from Neanderthals.
Interesting. And, I was thinking about this, like it is scary. You almost feel ashamed of our ancestors or ashamed of us, of course, because of this enormous power we have. Do you think that human beings, in wiping out these species like the woolly mammoth, do you think that there's something that's sort of inherently destructive about human beings, or does this sort of happen over time?
We are not particularly cruel animals. We are not more cruel than, I don't know, lions or alligators or whatever. We are just far more powerful. So we can do things that these other animals can't. I mean, also in those days, nobody really understood what was happening. I mean, if you live in a tribe of humans 15,000 years ago in America, and every year you hunt a few woolly mammoths, you don't understand that over maybe 1,000 years or 2,000 years, this would lead to the complete disappearance of all the mammoths from the planet. Nobody lives for 1,000 years and can see the process happening. And this is something, again, very common in life, that some of the most important processes, it's very hard to see them because they happen gradually and slowly. You even think about the way that we grow up. Like, we never see it actually happening. If like you're 10 years old, now is your 10th birthday, and you go to sleep, and you wake up like you're 9 years old, you go to sleep, next day morning you wake up, now birthday 10 years old, you look the same. Like you look in the mirror in the morning, you look exactly the same like you looked yesterday evening. You didn't just immediately kind of became taller or whatever. So, and this is true every day. Every day when we look at ourselves in the mirror, we look more or less the same as yesterday. Nevertheless, if you look at yourself at intervals of, say, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, I didn't look like this when I was 10. I looked completely different. So how did it happen? It's not that there was one day that everything changed. Every day something small changes. And it was the same with the mammoth. Like every year, there was one mammoth less. And after 1,000 years, no more mammoth. But nobody notices that this is happening.
Huh. So why are human beings so bad at reacting to slow approaching danger, like climate change? We know intellectually that it's happening. We know it, but in a way, because it didn't happen, from today to tomorrow, in a dramatic way. Like why can't we anticipate a slow approaching danger? Is that encoded in our DNA?
To some extent, yes. I mean, climate change is different from what happened to the mammoth, because with the mammoth, as far as we know, humans didn't understand what was happening. It was really over a very long time. So nobody came to the tribe and told people, wait, we are destroying the mammoth. Let's stop killing a few mammoths every year. Now it's different because we understand. Now, with the help of science, we understand that we are causing climate change. Still, we don't do enough to stop it. And I think that partly it is because it's difficult for us to think long term. Again, going back to the Stone Age, we didn't have any big effect on the climate. So we are not adapted to taking responsibility for such big things. I mean, part of the reason it's important to know history is that history shapes the way we behave today. To take just an example, lots of people are afraid of spiders. I mean, as a kid, I was terrified of spiders. I still don't like them very much. I'm better with them now, but when I was a kid, really, a spider was the worst thing in the world. Hardly anybody is afraid of cars. Now, this is strange, because if you look at the numbers, spiders hardly kill anybody. I mean, every year, maybe a few people are killed by a spider bite, a dangerous spider, but it's very rare. In contrast, every year, more than 1 million people are killed by cars. So you would expect that people will be terrified of cars. You see a car, oh no, or you run away. And you don't. But you do run away, at least some of us, from spiders. Why? Because of history. For thousands of years, when we lived in the wild, spiders were a danger, so we got used to being afraid of spiders. Cars didn't exist until 100 years ago. And it takes time to learn a deep fear. So we still carry the deep fears from the wild, from the savannah, from tens of thousands of years ago. We didn't have enough time to learn to fear cars. And it's the same even with the mammoth that we talked about. The mammoth didn't have enough time to start being afraid of humans. When the humans appeared on the scene, the mammoth look at them. They don't look scary, these small, cute apes. And by the time the mammoth realized this is the most dangerous thing on the planet, it's over. They are gone. And now we have this problem with climate change, that it's easy for us to be afraid of snakes, to be afraid of other people. You know, when you live tens of thousands of years ago in some tribe, then you're very afraid of the other tribe that lives on the other side of the river. They are dangerous. They might come to kill us. So also today, it's very easy to make people afraid of some other country, of some other nation, because we are programmed to have such fears. But to be afraid that, I don't know, the things we do will change the climate and this will cause a catastrophe, They are not adapted to it.
Hmm.
So
It's
that's a problem.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to me. I think about our country, especially, is so polarized right now, and it does seem like the two sides are trying to wipe each other out. And reading your books, the reason they're so vital is because they speak to our times now. We're talking about people living in the Stone Age, but we're really talking about people that are, we can learn a lot of lessons from how people used to live. And I wonder about that. Are we, Homo sapiens took over the earth. There are no more human beings, but we keep subdividing it as people. And I think about that in terms of language, is that why aren't we gravitating all towards one common language? Because that would help us cooperate better. But in the United States, there's so many different dialects and accents. Why is that we keep subdividing ourselves?
First of all, it should be said that we are more united than in any previous time in history. Again, the food we eat, the clothes we wear, they come from the other side of the world. This was not like that in the Stone Age. But we have, because of what I said earlier, we have this tribal instinct to be afraid. It's very easy to make people afraid of some other group of people. In the same way that it's easy to make us afraid of spiders and snakes, because kind of it's something very deep in us. And in the present situation, it's very dangerous because we now have really the power to destroy ourselves in different ways even. It's a menu. You can choose nuclear war, you can choose climate change, you can choose developing dangerous technologies like artificial intelligence. There are many ways to destroy ourselves. And the only way to prevent it is by having some kind of cooperation between people in different countries. Now, this doesn't mean that we abolish our independent countries or we abolish our languages and traditions. No, it just means that people in different countries, they still have their countries, their languages, but they can cooperate on common problems like climate change or like nuclear war. And I think that a model of how this works is the Football World Cup, which is just beginning in a few days, which is, I think, a very kind of optimistic event in what it shows us. Because in the World Cup, you have fierce national loyalties. Everybody's very loyal to their national team and wave the flag. And if your team wins, you're happy. If your team loses, you're very sad. And that's a good thing, this team spirit. At the same time, the World Cup is based on an agreement between all the nations. Because if you can't agree on the same rules, you can't play football. If you have, I don't know, the Brazilians say you have to kick it with your leg. And then the Americans come and say, no, we think that you should pick it up with your hands. You can't play like this. Everybody needs to agree on the same rules. There are limits to the field, and you can't just give a blow to the other player in order to get past them. And everybody agrees on the rules. If people stop agreeing on the rules, everything will collapse. So I think this should be a model also, for international politics, also for internal politics. You have elections, like we also had elections. If you have a group that says, if we score a goal, that's one, but if you score a goal, we don't recognize it, it doesn't work. You can't play like that.
Yeah, you're really speaking to our national moment here. Something I found really refreshing about your book is that you say we don't know a lot. That's something you wouldn't find in a typical textbook in a school. Why is it important in science to admit what we don't know?
I think this is the most important principle of science. I think science originally, historically, was based on the discovery of ignorance. The biggest discovery in the history of science is the discovery of ignorance. What do I mean? That for much of history, you had different cultures, religions, whatever, that were convinced that they know everything. And the scientific revolution started when people came and say, no, we don't know everything. Not all the answers are in this book or in that book. Nobody knows. We know some things, but there are things nobody knows. And this is why we have to research and to go out of the world, like you want to know what kind of animals there are in the world. If you just read the old books, they will tell you about some animals, but there are many animals that don't appear in any book. You need to go yourself to the forest, to the savannah, to the ocean, and explore. And that's the meaning of saying, I don't know what kind of animals live in the ocean. I need to go and explore. And even after 500 years of scientific explorations, there are still many things that we don't know. If we just invent some story, I don't know something, so I'll just invent some story, then this is the end of research. I think I know everything. So it's very important, if you don't know something, to say, I just don't know. And also, again, one very good thing about science is the ability to say, not just I don't know, but also I made a mistake.
Right.
I thought it was like this, but actually, no, it's like that. And this is how science progresses, by saying I made a mistake.
Yeah, I read a book by Chuck Klosterman called "But What If We're Wrong," which posed a really interesting question. It said, human beings are either at the end of knowledge, where the things that we're going to learn are going to get smaller and smaller, or we're going to find out we have the whole paradigm wrong, and that we're at the beginning of knowledge, and we're about to be shocked by the discoveries. Like, where does your mind go? What do you think? Do you think we're getting towards the end of knowledge, or at the beginning?
No, I mean, I think we're just at the beginning. It's not that what we discovered so far is not true, but it's just a small part of what is out there. Whether you look at physics or biology or history, there are so many dark spots that we just don't know what's there. And this is part, I think, of the beauty of science, that if you want to explore, there is still so much more to explore out there.
Yeah, and throughout the book, you raise these tantalizing questions, which I think are great for students, because you're asking big questions that they can really debate in the classroom. What's something about early human beings that you'd really like to know the answer to? Can you think of anything?
For instance, we don't know exactly what was the relationship between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals, these other humans that once lived on Earth. When I was in university, I was still taught that Neanderthals completely disappeared. This discovery that actually there were some kind of mixed families with a sapiens mother, Neanderthal father, and a common child, this is a very recent discovery just from the last 10 or 15 years. Just this year, Svante Pääbo won the Nobel Prize in medicine for his contribution to this discovery. And every year, our understanding expands, but we still don't know what exactly happened there. I mean, were the relations between sapiens and Neanderthals violent? Did they fight each other? Was it a more peaceful coexistence and intermingling? And this kind of colors our entire understanding of who we are, of our species. I mean, are we responsible for the systematic murder of all our close relatives in nature, all the other humans? Or are we actually a nicer species that went over the world and everywhere made friends and intermingled with the local population? That's a very, very big question, not just about what happened 50,000 years ago. It's a big question about who are we deep inside.
Yeah.
And we don't have the definitive answer to this question.
Yeah, in Neanderthals, you say had larger brains than Homo sapiens. So what do you think they were using those larger brains for? Like, do you have a suspicion?
And we don't know that. That's a fascinating question, again, that we know they were very different from us in many ways. They couldn't cooperate, for instance, in large numbers. This is why we took over the world and not they. But what did they do with these very large brains? So maybe they are very good in tracking animals. Maybe they are very good, I don't know, in dancing. Maybe they had these amazing songs. I don't know. And we don't have a full Neanderthal today that we can explore these questions. But every year we discover more evidence about these ancient humans. So also we don't know much about, you know, the daily lives of people in the Stone Age. So we know some things, like they didn't go to school. Instead of going to school, they woke up in the morning and they go to the forest to climb trees and look for fruits and whatever. And you know, when we today, if you're a kid and you wake up and you feel, I don't want to go to school, it sounds much more fun to go to the forest and climb a tree. And there is something deep inside you which still remembers how things were in the Stone Age. But for instance, we don't know what they believed. What were their religious beliefs, for instance? I mean, all the religions that we know today, Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, all these, they are just from like the last 3,000 years. It's yesterday morning in terms of human history. We are talking about people who lived 50,000 years before the Bible, before Jesus, before Moses. So what did they believe? For instance, when I was a kid, one of the biggest questions that kept kind of bothering me was what happens to people after they die? And, you know, I kept asking the adults, the parents, the teachers, and they told me all kinds of stories. And at some point I realized they don't know. That they just invented all these stories which don't really make much sense, and they don't know. And which was a huge shock that, you know, something so important and the adults don't know the answer. What was even more shocking was to realize they don't seem to care very much. Like, I mean, how come they worry about all these political problems and all these economic problems, but the fact they don't know what happens after they die, it doesn't bother them. And I'm sure that people 50,000 years ago, they worried about what happens when we die. So what were their answers?
Yeah, I saw an interview with you where you talked about a kid who expressed concerns that baboons might overtake us, and you had a really funny line. You said, "It's the rats we should worry about." And
absolutely, because the rats,
yeah.
the rats have a much better chance of survival. You know, if there is a nuclear war and human civilization is destroyed, the baboons won't survive that. They are too much like us. They are too fragile, but the rats will survive. So, you know, they'll have some difficult years, the rats, but then they emerge from their holes and you have all these leftovers from the human world. So they have all these food left over from humans and they can eat that. And then there are no humans around and no big animals because they are all dead. And the rats begin to develop and to evolve. And eventually you have these big, super intelligent rats that rule the planet. And they could look back at us the same way that we look at the dinosaurs. You know, now we look back and, for instance, you know, this, I mean, the dinosaurs were destroyed by an asteroid that came from outer space and hit planet Earth. And this destroyed the dinosaurs. And this gave the chance to mammals like us, which were very, very small animals back then, to come out of their holes and take over the world. And so maybe for the rats, we will be like the asteroid. That you will have these rat scientists in like millions of years from now, explaining to rat kids that once we were just these small animals living in holes in the ground, but luckily for us, these stupid apes, they destroyed everything in the nuclear war. And this was very good because this gave the chance to the rats to develop and take over the world.
You must sometimes be tempted to get into science fiction. Do you ever think about that, about, you know, trying something completely different that's based on human anthropology and, you know, in the world of science and write something that's future forward, basically, that's fictional?
I do write about the future, but most of my work is kind of, it's not trying to predict the future, is kind of mapping different scenarios, and especially dangerous scenarios, to warn people about the dangers of artificial intelligence or the dangers of bioengineering. Science fiction can be very helpful in this. I think some science fiction is maybe the most important genre today, because many people, when they think about AI or bioengineering, they get their information from science fiction. So it's a very important genre. Unfortunately, many of the actual movies and books, they focus people's attention on the wrong dangers. Like you have this scenario of the robots trying to kill all the robots gaining consciousness and trying to kill all the people. And this is very unlikely to happen. I'm much more worried about scenarios like, AI being and surveillance technology being used to destroy human privacy, which is now technically possible. For most of human history, you had these dictators and kings and priests who wanted to spy on everybody, but they couldn't. Now with the new technology, it is becoming possible to monitor everybody all the time. And this is very frightening. So this is what we should focus on more than on robots rebelling and trying to kill all the people. I don't know if I'll ever write science fiction, but I'll try to focus on really the kind of more realistic dangers that we are facing, and yeah, I mean, maybe someday.
Maybe. So in the book, you talk about this period of human history, which you call the veil of silence, which is a long period of time where there's no recorded history, but a lot actually happened. I'd be really curious to know if there's an example of a moment in history that you really would love to witness. If you could go back and witness a particular moment in history, what would you go back and see?
So maybe the discovery of Australia, because again, for 2 million years, when humans lived in Africa and Asia, no human ever managed to reach Australia. It was too far away. There was an ocean in between, and people just didn't know how to swim or how to build boats. And then Homo sapiens, our species, it spreads from Africa. It goes over land, reaches India and Indonesia, and reaches kind of the very end. And then there is the ocean. And they discover how to make boats, but there is still the ocean. Like you reach the last island in the chain of islands, which is Indonesia, and you look to the horizon and you don't see anything. There is just ocean. And at some point, some humans got together and said, let's explore what's out there. And it's a big project. 50,000 years ago, you need to prepare boats, you need to prepare food. It's not something that one or two persons can do together. You need 10, maybe hundreds of people working on this together. And you go into the boats and you start rowing in the boat, and you row and you row, and you're in the middle of the sea, and you look back and you see the island you came from disappearing. And you look forward and there is nothing there, just ocean. This could be the end of the world. And maybe they start having an argument in the boat. And some people say, okay, let's turn back, there is nothing there. And the other people say, no. How do you know there is nothing there? We haven't been there. Let's go forward. And maybe some people turn back and some people go forward and they keep rowing, and there is less food, the water is running out, and they still say, no, let's keep going forward. And they reach Australia. And the moment that humans reach Australia, this, I think, is the moment that we really became the dominant animal on the planet. It was something that no other animal could do before us. Other animals also go to sea, but they do it very slowly, like dolphins or whales. They were once land creatures. It takes them millions of years to learn how to live in the deep ocean because their body needs to change by evolution. It takes millions of years. Humans do it in a few generations. They learn how to cross the ocean in boats. And when they reach the new continent, very quickly, they completely change it. Like we talked earlier, they destroy most of the big animals of Australia quite quickly. So again, this is the moment when we became both the most powerful animals in the world and also the most dangerous animals in the world. And this is, again, this sense of being unstoppable, that you reach the end of the world. There is just ocean, there is nothing there, and still you don't stop. You go forward.
Right. And I was very fascinated by that. You have a map in your book towards the end of the book, which is, it starts with Africa on the left-hand side where human beings or Homo sapiens sprout up and start to develop. And then it's really a progression all the way to the right, all the way to Australia, which is sort of the terminus. And I'd never seen it that way before. And it really struck me that usually, you know, in the US, if we're in a classroom and we see a map, the center is going to be the United States, but it totally recontextualized it to see Africa on the left and moving all the way to Australia. I thought that was pretty fascinating. I wish I had seen something like that earlier on. We are winding down in the time that we have with you, unfortunately, because I could speak to you all day. I wanted to bring up my brother quickly, who's a devotee of you, and as am I. But my brother really wanted to know who are your heroes and who helps inform your thinking?
Oh, there are so many people that, the inspiration for me initially came from Jared Diamond, that I read Guns, Germs, and Steel. And this kind of, before that, I was just a medievalist. I was a historian specializing in medieval history. And I read Guns, Germs, and Steel, and it's a wonderful book. And besides all the knowledge that it gave me, it also gave me the inspiration, the idea, hey, you can write books like that. You can try and encompass tens of thousands of years of human history, the big picture in one book. So this was one big inspiration. Another big inspiration was Frans de Waal. He's a primatologist. He studies chimpanzees and gorillas and so forth. And reading him made me realize that humans are animals, which is, on the one hand, the simplest idea that, yes, obviously humans are animals, but also it's one of the most controversial ideas in the world. For lots and lots of people, it's absolutely not. Humans are humans, animals are animals. There is a big gap in between. And you read the work of Frans de Waal, and it becomes so obvious that, no, we are very close. Yes, we are stronger and more powerful than the chimpanzees and the gorillas. But in our emotional life, in our social lives, we are very, very similar to them.
Yeah. And I want to ask you, in the 1 minute that we have remaining, could you tell us about Sapienship? I just wanted to know about the organization that you've created and the impact that you're trying to create.
Yeah. So, to write a book, in the end, you just get the name of the author on the book and everybody thinks, oh, he wrote it himself. But actually, it's the work of an entire team. So we have like 20 people working in Sapienship, and we collaborate with other organizations on different projects, on the children's book, on a TV series, on other things. The main mission is really to change how people view the world, to enable people to really look at the big picture. Yes, we have all our conflicts that divide us, but underneath it all, we are all human beings. We come from the same place. We have the same bodies. We have the same emotions. We love our parents. We are afraid of spiders or snakes. We are threatened by things like climate change, like nuclear war. So just keep reminding people that we have so much in common. If we go down the path of hatred, this will be the end of our species. We will destroy ourselves. If we go down the path of compassion and cooperation, we can create a much, much better world.
Well, that is a great place to end this interview. And I wanted to thank you. We feel so honored that you shared your thinking and your time with us. You're an enormously influential person, and we're just very grateful for your time. Thank you very much, Yuval, and best of luck to you. And this book, it's a great one.
Thank you. And yeah, thank you for inviting me and for having the time with me.
Okay, maybe one day we'll see you here in Plainville, Massachusetts. Thanks
I hope
again,
so.
and we'll see you down the road. Take care of
Yeah.
yourself.
Bye-bye.